It sounds like you're interested in checking out the rest of this album, perhaps, John.
Already been ordered.
Yeah, there you go. I had a haunting suspicion. Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another Friday episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy, that's John, and it's time to dig into some music. Some music that you guys suggested for us to check out. And as it is Friday, we will continue the theme of devoting that day to songs you guys have posited in our comments field. And today's song was offered up by MozChops999 on our episode devoted to human sexual responses track Land of the Glass Pine Cones, which I believe was another viewer suggestion. It comes the track itself that Moz Chops has offered up is by Lou Reed and John Cale. Now, if you would have told me that this was going to end up in John's lap, you could have colored me surprised because I thought for sure this was going to be one that I was going to listen to, given how much John loves Reed, Cale, and anything, Velvet Underground. But John, do you want to elaborate a little bit on why this hasn't been listened to yet by you?
Yeah, I can take or leave them. No, I know about not this song, but I know about the album, and for reasons which I'll explain later, I've never listened to it. So when this popped up, it's one of those things you file away in your brain and then don't revisit for 20 years,
Yeah.
and then ping, there's a big old nudge, and you think, "Oh, excellent! I'll snaffle this one up."
Sure, sure. It's one of the beauties of this channel, honestly. There's been more than a handful
Yeah.
of songs that either you have offered up or someone in the listening audience has offered up that was sort of in the same vein, like on my radar to listen to, but I hadn't been given the, as you put it, the proper nudge. And oftentimes we get that on this channel. So it's nice to hear that I'm not alone when it comes to those circumstances. So go off, give this thing a go. Let Moz Chops, myself, and everybody else out there know what you thought of this probably surprising collaboration from these two gentlemen, given the history that preceded this collab. But yeah, love to hear what you have to say about their track Forever Changed.
Train entering the city, I lost myself and never came back.
So it starts off with this piano and guitar, and it's really interesting because piano is very much sort of pounding away rhythmically, these nice chords, and the guitar has this almost, it's like the piano's going round in an orbit, a circular orbit. The guitar is an elliptical one, and they kind of bump together, but not as you expect on 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just really interesting. This sort of stutter to the guitar. It's like you put extra notes in on the main sort of strums. That's the best as I can express it. Which gives it this sort of sense of activity and bustling nature. You could imagine this being the soundtrack for a speeded up footage of like a factory floor, an assembly line, or traders on trading floor of a stock market, or just people commuting through the streets of a city. It's that kind of bustle. And then comes Cale's voice. I've always liked his voice. There's a weird kind of sternness to his voice a little bit. There's that hard edge, like you would not mess with him. But he has this sort of power, like command to his voice as well. It's immensely clear as well. And it kind of confirms what I was thinking. It's a train coming to the city. So you got that view. But it says something about, I think it says he lost himself and then never coming back, which could easily be about Cale himself from a Welsh mining village and ended up in Greenwich Village. That must have been some trip for him. But yeah, really sounds great.
Took a trip around the world and never came back. Black silhouettes, crisscross tracks, never came back. But never changed. But never changed. I'm frivolous.
So I was just working out there. That must have been the chorus. Phrase change, he says a couple of times, and the guitar just seems to be untethered at this point. And yeah, it sounds great. I mean, there's a wonderful tone to it. It sort of wriggles free of its tetherings, and it's also like coming up into the light, crackling with energy and electricity. And it's a beautiful tone to it, and it strays in true sort of Lou Reed form into sort of this breakdown, almost into, feedback or dissonance. It's never far away from a note going a bit odd, but still sounding great. Jesus shit, all the influence these guys had is incredible to think. Yeah, it sounds absolutely wonderful. And then it sort of drops back into trudging along into the next verse.
Uncaring and cold. You might think I'm empty, depends on your point of view. Society and it, who paints and records them. The high and the low, never turn back. Changed. Forever changed. Forever changed. Forever changed.
Felt so good.
Gotta get to the city, get a job. Gotta get some work to see me through. My own life's behind, I see it receding. My life's disappearing from view. Hong Kong and I was changed. Burma, Thailand, and I was changed. A few good friends to see me through. Henry and Bridget to see me through. Only art to see me through. Only heart to see me through. My whole life's disappearing from view. Forever changed. Forever changed. I was forever changed.
Yeah, that was yeah, that was brilliant. For some reason, it sort of really struck me as being really profound. I guess it's that Cale's voice as well, isn't it? When he sings something like, "No, whatever I done, my old life is behind. I see it receding. My life's disappearing from view." It sounds really profound. And I guess from any normal person singing that, it would be of concern. Um, but it feels more like, that how their life has progressed in a way, you know, very different to most normal people like us. Yeah, just incredible. It's just the stuff going on about whether he'd mean it or not, society and the um, yeah. Hong Kong, Burma, Thailand. He mentioned no idea, but he kept saying I was changed. Was changed. I've got a feeling that relates to Cale more than to Warhol. I don't see. I may be wrong, but I just don't see Warhol. um, I see him like the vampiric element of his nickname, and just like only out in the streets at night and never leaving the sort of bounds of New York City. Though I might be totally wrong, but that's the kind of impression I got, especially towards the latter part of his career where he's almost catatonic whenever he's in front of a camera. Um, yeah, Henry and Bridget again. Don't know who the hell that was, but yeah, something about his art and then his heart is what got him through. Yeah, it's just really, and it's just two instruments and his voice. Really great song. The guitar was just squealing and squirming away. It kind of made me feel about sort of turmoil, whether that turmoil is emotional or personal or creative. I don't know. It kind of reminded me of sometimes Robert Fritz's guitar sounds a bit like that, where it's kind of echoing what's going on in the subject's head. This is absolutely superb. Oh, what an idiot I was to dismiss the concept of listening to this. If this song is anything to go by, yeah, that's maybe snapped up pretty too sweet. Well, we need to find out some more about the contents of this song and the rest of the album. So let's go back and check it out with Andy.
All right, John, you are back. Tell us, are you forever changed?
Well, I have to say thank you to Miles Chops 9.99. It's good to see he's trending under a tenner. So yeah, I was thinking about this, and I know about the album, but I don't, and I know the circumstances, and like you referred to, I don't know when they actually started talking again because was Reed obviously kicked Cale out of Underground, the Velvet Underground, in a fairly brutal way, and he didn't have the balls to tell him. Had to get Sterling Morrison to tell him, by the way, you've been voted out. So I don't know when they came together. It was probably the death of Warhol, but yeah. So I passed this by at the time. I'm so glad this has come up now. So spoiler alert, I thoroughly enjoyed this. So it starts off with this melody of guitar and piano. And it's interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're the only two instruments in the whole song, apart from the vocals. And it's almost in a way like there are two characters, the two protagonists here. Um, and the whole thing has this bustling feel of movement, a sort of hurly-burly of city life. Um, you can imagine this music set to a sort of speeding up footage of a assembly line on a factory floor or a trading floor or just commuters going around the streets in a city. And then in comes Cale's voice. Um, his voice is really distinct and it has many qualities. Um, it's intense, commanding, and there's like a no nonsense edge of resolve to his voice. He is certainly not a person to mess with, which is probably why I really didn't tell him to his face he'd been kicked out. But I really love his voice, and it's crystal clear as well, like every syllable you can get. Um, and the first line he sings mentions a train entering the city, which tallies with my immediate impression of the music. Um, and he sings about taking a trip around the world and never coming back. And then we go to this chorus of "Forever Changed." Now I know this is from songs trailer, reading Cale's album about Andy Warhol, and I believe a kind of tribute to him. Whenever you think of Warhol, and whatever your opinion is of him, he definitely changed their lives.
Hmm.
Um, and from the limited amount of knowledge and reading I have about early days of Velvet Underground, I think Warhol probably shows Lou Reed about as much affection as he showed anyone in his long career of nurturing, stroke, exploiting young talent. um, but this song, it strikes me, particularly at this point, it could so easily be about Cale himself. Um, that trip he made from a coal mining village in Wales to a very different village called Greenwich was a hell of a journey. Just that alone, so different. Yeah, that you got to think, some of it could be applied to him. And the forever change can be about how what effect Warhol had on popular culture as well. That popular culture has been forever changed from when he came along. The 15 Minutes of Fame, the Factory, all that sort of stuff,
Hmm.
and this production line of art, whether it be sort of printed matter or celluloid. So yeah, all very interesting stuff. So during the opening verse, the guitar, the piano is pounding away in fairly sort of simple, regular beats. But the guitar has this riff where it appears, I don't think it does, but it appears to almost add extra notes into its riff. So if you imagine the piano's like has a circular orbit, the guitar's is like elliptical, and they kind of bump together in different places where you wouldn't expect on the bar, four beats of a bar, which just makes it really interesting. And it gives it this bustling feel. And when it gets to the chorus, when he sings Forever Changed, it feels like the guitar becomes untethered and it sort of crackles with energy. And it's a real reminder of what a fantastic guitarist Lou Reed was. Um, and the sounds that come out, the tone is just brilliant. It then tempers down. The next verse, comes in and it tempers back down and sort of settles back down in with the piano. And it mentions that emotional veneer of Warhol. Um, I think in footage later in his life, whenever you see Andy Warhol, he appears almost catatonic. There's like he doesn't react to anything. He could be stuff like Weekend Bernie's or whatever it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same criticism was leveled at his artwork. It was clever, ingenious, and commercially focused rather than having any sort of passion or personality. You know, um, you pay your money, you take your choice on that. It mentions the line Society Andy, who paints and records them, which I thought was a really interesting line. And I don't think many people would have called him Society Andy to his face. Um, so that tickled me. Again, we get the Forever Change chorus of that expressive guitar. And as I said, I really adore the tone of that guitar. The way it sort of flutters and bends and twists. And the tone of it, if you know Reed, it could be 1972 you're listening to this, or 1982 or 1992. It's really quite timeless. And again, I just think of all the sort of influence that he had on sounds of guitars that to this day we love. The next verse has some really interesting lines. Cale sings about getting some work and a job to see him through. And then these lines, my old life's behind, I see it receding, my life's disappearing from view. I don't know why, because it's not particularly, but this had like quite an impression on me. Um, the sort of feeling of being able to recognize profound moments in your life and consider them and reflect on them. I found those lines to be really impactful. And I think I said in the reaction, if this was talking most of the time when you hear those sort of lines, it's usually a bad thing. You say about your life receding and disappearing from view. But I think for Cale in particular, such a change. Yeah, it's definitely a life lived unlike most that people like us would ever even recognise. And it really hit home. I just found that really powerful, those two lines.
Hmm.
I do not know, following on from that, what significance Hong Kong, Burma, and Thailand have. However, again, I suspect this reflects back to Cale rather than Warhol. I could be wrong, but I see Warhol as this kind of the vampiric part of his nickname, only moving through the streets at night and never leaving the boundaries of New York City. And he probably did it did, but it just that's the impression you get that he was very much a beast of like Manhattan and Greenwich Village and stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, During this, the guitar picks up its freedom of movement from the chorus and runs with it for the rest of the song. It twitches and squirms and writhes. It's almost like the graphic form of the reading from an insane ECG. Really creative. And in a way, it reminded me, I think it's the only person I can think of, Robert Fripp. He does guitar work where the guitar seems to reveal the mental turmoil or conflicts or quandaries of the subject. It just, you get that feel from just these bizarre collections of notes. And I think I got that from that as well. There's another reference in the last verse to good friends Henry Bridget. Not got a clue. And then he says about only art see me through, only heart to see me through. My old life's disappearing from view. Again, it could be really tragic hearing that, but I don't get that here. And with the confirmation I was forever changed, the guitar settles down to sit with the keyboards, and then they gently back into that rhythm, and then they slow down gently to a finish. So this song was really simple, but I found it really profound and striking and wonderful. I think by the time this came out, Lou Reed had just saved his career with the New York album in '89. But as a young devotee of the cult that was the Velvet Underground, I really wanted something with more oomph at the time and the age I was. And I had already very wrongly discounted Cale's solo work. And I have definitely revised that opinion over the years with a bit of maturity and taste. So in my mind at the time, I would discounted this work and said, oh, those two are brought an album for Andy Warhol, so what? So I'm really glad to be proved so wrong many, many years later, because I thought this was absolutely wonderful. And if this isn't in my top three at the end of the year, then there's going to be some very good songs suggested.
Yeah. I'd imagine that you would have had the connection to this song that you did, so all of that makes sense. Um, the things that can occur to a listener who isn't equipped with the historical information or have the deep connection that you have still resonated with me, though. The what I know about the interesting relationship dynamics between these two individuals was almost on display in the form of these two instruments playing together, two very different sounding instruments that still sounded good together in this moment, which it could be a quick little synopsis of Cale and Reed themselves, and the success they had whilst in Velvet Underground. So I found that to be interesting and charming and made me smile because it was like art imitating life through these two instruments. And Cale's delivery over them, I think part of it is, yes, he attacked this with probably with clarity in mind as far as how he came across, but I think it just being those two instruments and his voice offered up a platform for his voice to be that much more clear as well. So it was really easy to follow along and kind of just fall into this song. So yeah, I very much enjoyed it as well. Probably never will be able to, or not anytime soon, be able to enjoy it to the level you did because of all the history you have with the band. But I still found it very interesting. And I thought that I thought that there was some interesting the way it was written about Warhol, but seemed to be much more autobiographical. I thought was a point of intrigue as well, about an attribute of this song that made me go because it's so intimate. It sounds like it's coming from the mouth of the person it's about. Um, so yeah, as mentioned, I don't know if we did mention this, but I mean, we did mention that you're a huge fan. We've covered Velvet Underground on the channel before. So I don't want to go too deep into who exactly Reed and Cale are, or who the Velvet Underground were, because we've done that plenty on this channel. But I do want to focus on the album and the track, which may be the only areas that are a blind spot for John anyway at this point. So, Songs for Drella, which I feel is redundant at this point because you've already mentioned it, you know that much, is a 1990 studio album by Lou Reed and John Cale, both formerly of American rock band Velvet Underground. It is a song cycle about Andy Warhol, their mentor, who had died following routine surgery in 1987. Drella was a nickname for Warhol, coined by a Warhol superstar on Dean, who is it Robert Olivio or whatever? It was an actor, an American actor, well before my time. Uh, but yeah, it's a kind of this sort of combination of Cinderella and Dracula. So it was used by Warhol's crowd, but never liked by Warhol himself, this nickname. The song cycle focuses on Warhol's interpersonal relations and experiences, with songs falling roughly into three categories: Warhol's first person perspective, which makes up the vast majority of the album; third person narratives chronicling events and affairs; and first person commentaries on Warhol by Reed and Cale themselves. The songs, in general, address events in their chronological order. Lou Reed and John Cale spoke to one another for the first time in years at Warhol's memorial service at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York on April 1st, 1987. The painter Julian Schnabel suggested they write a memorial piece for Warhol. On January 7th and 8th, 1989, Cale and Reed performed Songs for Drella at St. Anne's Church in Brooklyn Heights. As Cale was wrapping up his album, Words for the Dying, also performed at St. Anne's Church, and Reed had finished and was touring with his New York studio album. The project took another year to complete. So your timeline is checking out, because I know that you had mentioned around the death of Warhol and then 1990s New York album by Reed. So yeah, everything's tracking to this point. The first full version, notably with the inclusion of A Dream in one performance, was played on November 29th and 30th and December 2nd and 3rd at the Next Wave Festival at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. On December 4th and 5th of '89, a live performance without an audience was filmed at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, directed by Ed Lachman, and released on VHS and Laserdisc formats. Sign of the times. Over the following 2 months, Reed and Cale proceeded to record the material for the album, which was released on April 11th, 1990, by Sire Records. The album was the pair's first full collaborative record since the Velvet Underground's second studio album, 1968's White Light, White Heat. And by the end of the recording, Cale vowed to never work with Reed again due to personal differences, and plans to support the album with a tour were shelved. No surprise there, I suppose. Nevertheless, Songs for Drella would prove to be a prelude to the Velvet Underground reunion. After playing a Drella selection on June 15th, 1990 at a Warhol Velvet Underground exhibition at the Cartier Foundation in Jouy-en-Josas. Pardon me, I don't speak French, but that was my best effort. Reed and Cale were joined on stage by Sterling Morrison and Maureen Tucker for a rendition of the Velvet Underground song Heroin, which eventually led to the first and last Velvet Underground reunion, which took place in 1993, after which Cale and Reed again vowed never to work with one another. Oh my. Songs for Drella received positive reviews and critical praise upon its release. Spin described Songs for Drella as a moving testament to one of the '60s most important icons and named it one of the top 20 albums of the year. Q, Spin, and Rolling Stone each rated the album 4 out of 5 stars, while AllMusic rated 4.5 out of 5 stars, and the Chicago Sun-Times scored it with its wonky 4 out of 4 stars. Rolling Stone writer Paul Evans stated, Reed's edgy guitar, fullness of heart, and clipped journalistic poetry bring into sculptural relief Cale's elegant keyboards and brainy lyricism. As their subject, Warhol is both immediate and mythic. The idea entrepreneur who produced the Velvets, he provokes an homage that's romantic yet casual. And Cale and Reed pay their debt with an offhand pop epic. Reed and Cale are the survivors Warhol wasn't fated to become. In popular music, only bluesmen and country greats manage the maturity these two display. Fashioning a litany out of Warhol's off-kiltered pantheon, Eddie Sidgwick, Billy Name, and Valerie Solanas, whose attempted murder of Warhol prefigured the shooting of John Lennon, Drella memorializes an era the way narrative folk music generally has done. Reed and Cale add rare intelligence to their nostalgia, but it's on a more soulful level that Drella finally hits. The subtle values of modesty, hesitance, and loving observation dignify this sweet and knowing tribute to these men's mentor, producer, and friend. Over at The Quietus, writer Andrew Holtor published an article in 2020 reflecting on the album and wrote, after Warhol died, a confluence of maturity, sobriety, and renewed trust in collaboration set each of them, Reed and Cale, on an inspired streak between about 1988 and 1993. Having found their gravity individually, they had to find it together again. Jointly produced, could it have been any other way? Drella is an intimate review with little else besides Cale's viola and keyboard, Reed's guitar, and some globs of gauzy 1990 sounding effects here and there. With Warhol gone, they were now their own most famous collaborators. They have themselves nowhere to hide. And he noted, Cale admitted that during rehearsals of Forever Changed, which carries a little Velvet's locomotion, he might as well have been singing about himself. Train entering the city, I lost myself and never came back. If the affinity between Reed and Warhol was bound up in anxious expectations, Warhol and Cale were just two boys from coal country, Pittsburgh and the Amman Valley. Is that how you pronounce it? The Amman Valley of Wales? I don't know if you're familiar, but that's what they.
But yeah.
Fair. That's the area of Wales, I suppose, also known for coal mining and things like that. I mean, Pittsburgh, steel, and all that. So I guess these very blue, which you also were quick to point out, the visuals that you described of these hustling, bustling urban areas, whether it's a factory line or whatever, is all blue collar, right? And that's Pittsburgh is, God, maybe the most quintessential blue collar city in America. I think people just equate that because of the steel industry. Obviously, Detroit and other manufacturing cities have that carry that as well. But I suppose you could say the same about this Amman Valley, of which I know very little, but it sounds like they are similar. And it's people who understood the lives they had dodged by coming to New York. So they came from this area and they escaped to the Big Apple chasing fame and in their own ways found it. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I mean, Cale's life would have been probably down the pit, but he, as a playing the viola, then went to London, so he escaped Wales, and then from London on a scholarship to New York. So the viola took him that far, and then playing all these avant-garde, modern, classical stuff
Yeah.
brought him to the orbit. I think of Sterling Morrison first, and then the rest. And he was the experimenter out of the band, really.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
sound.
Yeah. Which is what
I
I've come
mean,
to find
yeah,
doing
I mean,
these episodes with you.
yeah, I mean, Lou Reed came from a doo-wop group. It
Yeah.
was his first effort in the late 50s,
Yeah.
which is bizarre to think of, but
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. So let's jump into these lyrics. Train entering the city, I lost myself and never came back. Took a trip around the world and never came back. Black silhouettes, crisscrossed tracks, never came back. Forever changed, forever changed. You might think I'm frivolous, uncaring, and cold. You might think I'm empty. Depends on your point of view. Society, Andy, who paints and records them, the high and the low, never turn back. Forever changed, forever changed, forever changed, forever changed. Got to get to the city, get a job, got to get some work to see me through. My old life's behind. I see you proceeding. My life's disappearing, disappearing from view. Hong Kong, and I was changed. Burma, Thailand, and I was changed. A few good friends to see me through. Henry and Bridget to see me through. Only art to see me through. Only heart to see me through. My old life's disappearing, disappearing from view. Forever changed, forever changed. I was forever changed. In his autobiography, What's Welsh for Zen, John Cale writes about this song and confirms that last bit that was alluded to by Holter in his article for The Quietus. While we were putting songs for Drilla together, we never quite clarified what our attitude was towards Andy speaking all the time. And that included the questions of whether there should be any reference to the Velvet Underground. It's a good lyrical device to write from another person's point of view, but inevitably it was going to blur. In Forever Changed, I felt as if I was singing about myself as much as Andy, specifically my coming from Wales to New York and meeting members of the band. But I thought that that was a very interesting quote and telling and kind of confirmation of what Holter had said in that earlier article about this sort of, yeah, they ended up doing different things, but their paths crossed and they crossed coming from similar places earlier in life. And maybe there's also that what I found to be interesting as someone who's bit of a troglodyte on this subject matter coming into it was the different kind of relationship that Warhol had with Reed versus what Warhol had with Cale. He liked both of them. He enjoyed them very much, but I think that I don't know, maybe because Reed was different than Warhol, he found it to be more, I don't know, more of an experiment to
He
take.
was the guy.
There was like
He
this
was the
commonality between he and
yeah,
Cale that he didn't really have to dig deep because he knew existed. With
yeah.
Reed, it seemed like a more interesting relationship between the two.
Reed was like see the bit of the golden boy in his eyes, the star pupil who should light up everything, and he was fascinating back then because I mean, prior to that he'd had a breakdown, and his parents had signed off on electrotherapy, so he'd had a zzz, which fucked him up forever. So there's all sorts of weird things going on with Lou Reed at the time. Whereas I think Cale was a very interesting character, but in terms of that, more straightforward and direct as well, which I think probably Warhol would have handled much easier.
Yeah.
Um, than
It's
than
almost like
with
Warhol looked at Reed like a project or an experiment or something that he could mess with, and it was like he knew himself well enough to know that that he and Cale were similar, and not to take that tact, or maybe he was
yeah.
just like, you know, he. I don't know what it is, but there's this. I would love to dig deeper and learn more about the dynamics between each
Yeah.
one of them, and how they looked at Reed or how they looked at Warhol and how Warhol looked at them. But you're right, there was this odd um I don't know, like he had plans or something for Reed when he looked at him. And then but
Great expectations.
yes, great experience. But by the end of it, well, in reading some of this, it didn't seem like appropriate to fit it in, but here I'm finding a reason to. That Warhol by the end like became more and more resentful of Reed, and that he was like, as time passes, I hate Lou Reed more and more. It was something like with some of to a quote that I'm paraphrasing pretty accurately, which I thought was really intriguing. You know what I mean? But that's that's what happens with passion projects. You know what I mean? If you look at Cale and Cale looks at you and you guys shake hands and you see each other, you're going to have an even keel relationship for the rest of your lives in all likelihood, unless something crazy happens. But if you look at somebody and you're like, they're not like me and I'm intrigued by that and I'm going to, try to cultivate in them this or that or impose on them this expectations or whatever. Of course that's going to be volatile. There's going to be a tinderbox there. They're going to let you down in some way, shape or form because you don't know what you're getting with that person. So yeah, I found that to be really
Yeah,
intriguing too.
definitely think that Warhol felt a bit sort of disappointed in Lou Reed.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, Yeah, it's difficult because Warhol's a really difficult character to read because he said that these guys weren't very good. When he was talking about the band and saying that they were just a little project for him to play with and he didn't take it seriously and all that. I suspect he really did, but that was his public front. I
Yeah.
thought the days of the factory would have been an amazing place to go and visit. So you've got this old masters type vibe with the juniors reproducing the work that just like the Dutch masters used to do with the people who come to visit them in their studio and learn. They would knock out most of the drawings. They would do the big outlines. They get them. You can do the hands or the curtains or whatever, So these guys are doing all the screen printing and all this other work as well. It would have been an amazing place, and then with the film stuff as well, and the models and all the people who's promoting, it'd have been a crazy place. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
all of this
Um,
has made me think that maybe not Lou Reed, but I definitely we should bring some John Cale to the channel because it's really interesting stuff,
yeah.
amazing stuff. His solo work, and he went through various stages of um, madness, but some of his output is remarkable. Really is. So yeah, I should dig out some of that and bring it along.
Speaking of madness, the electroshock therapy that you alluded to earlier that Reed had undergone, was that tied to his addiction issues as well? Was there some belief that undergoing electroshock would maybe break the addiction or help him break
No,
the
it
addiction?
was purely a mental health thing. There were inferences that were supposed to cure his homosexual tendencies as well. This is
Oh,
like late 50s, early 60s.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Apparently the parents denied that, but it caused memory loss and all sorts of things. It's not a healthy thing to do,
No,
to be
no, of course
sad.
not.
Everything's fucking crazy is what it is.
Yeah,
They they might as well have drilled holes in his skull and drained
yeah,
stuff out that way,
exactly. Yeah, crazy time.
Mm.
All right. Well, on that on that high note, I should offer up Moss Chops. Thank you so much for offering up this track. This is a lot of fun to listen to, and for
Yeah,
me,
big time.
a lot of interesting history to dig into about a band that I'm learning more and more about as we do these episodes, and John and I discuss music in general, whether on or off camera. So yeah, I found it all to be really interesting, and I'm wondering why there hasn't been a movie made about these three or this time in New York, because it would be a really interesting watch. And obviously there's books out there. I just alluded to one of them, so I'd be interested to dig into that too. So yeah, sparked a lot of interest in me. So thanks, Moz Chops. I'm sure just John fanboying as much as he has over the years for these guys. This was a lot of fun and one of those little blind spots that was good to get dusted off for. And it sounds like you're interested in checking out the rest of this album, perhaps, John.
Already been ordered.
Yeah, there you go. I had a haunting suspicion on vinyl. I would venture to imagine. So yes, thank you so much, Moss Chops, for offering this up. John, thank you for giving it a go. I'm really glad you liked it. I'm sure Moss Chops is as well. Um, and guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know your thoughts down below. Please let us know if there's any other track off this album that we should check out. Better make it fast. Or any other Velvet Underground that we should check out on the channel. Please feel free to shout it out. I'm sure it'll be me in the listening seat when it comes to any of that stuff. I think we pretty much exhausted the one area that John wasn't familiar with surrounding Velvet Underground. But yeah, it really intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. Also, please like, share, and or subscribe. If you have a suggestion by any other band that you'd like to offer up to us, feel free to drop it down in the comments field as well. We will add it to our ever-growing list, and we will get to it in the future. So long as you've got patience, we've got time. And all that out of the way, hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. Have a great weekend, y'all.